the book, you weave attachment theory ideas throughout, and I'd love you to spend some time, letting our audience know about the concepts of attachment theory and its relationship to OCD and relationships.
Mhm. Yeah, and attachment theories, oh boy, it's having a moment. I think it's always kind of having a moment, but in popular culture, I see a lot of depictions of attachment theory and attachment as this static concept of like, well, I'm an avoidant attachment person, so like this is my pattern, and I really wanted to get away from that. So let me kind of start with the basics. When we're talking about attachment
Please.
theory,
Yeah.
we're talking about how when we're in relationships with others, we can have we can respond to them in ways that are on two different dimensions. So one dimension is anxiety, high or low
Okay.
anxiety.
Hmm.
Am I anxious about, does this person like me enough? Are they going to be there for me? Can I trust them? That kind of thing. And then the other one is avoidance. And
Okay.
avoidance would be kind of like, if you're high avoidance, what it means in this context. And I realize saying anxiety and avoidance, everybody's like, well, sounds like OCD. Correct, right? These things are, they are heightened in OCD. But
Yes.
so what? Whereas anxiety is this kind of like, I want to do a lot of like touching base. I want to do a lot of reassurance, that kind of thing. Avoidance is this idea of, ooh, I'm worried about getting too close. I'm worried that you'll kind of usurp my identity or something like that. If I'm too
Hmm.
close, that's threatening to me. So
Hmm.
I want to emotionally pull back. Okay. And they kind of sound like opposites. They're not really opposites. What they do is they create these kind of like four quadrants where you can be higher, low anxiety, higher, low avoidance. And within there, you have the different attachment styles. So if you're low in both, that's considered secure attachment. What
Okay.
I felt compelled to say is that different relationships have different attachment styles.
Sure.
Period. I think that's one thing that like I see a lot of, again, people are like, well, I'm an avoidant, so this is what I do. Well,
Hmm.
and I think all relationships can move toward security, and that's actually kind of the goal here. Um, and then if you are high anxiety and low avoidance, sometimes that's called like anxious ambivalent. It can be a really high, lots of reassurance, lots of checking in, lots of do you love me? Am I good enough? That kind of thing. High anxiety, high avoidance.
Hmm.
Okay. Is that one is often called disorganized, where you might have like I'm moving toward you and then I'm retreating away and I love you, don't leave me, get out of my face,
Hmm.
that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's, and not always, but that can be associated with past traumas, abuse, things like that. There are also certain other mental health conditions that tend to occur in that quadrant as well, beyond the scope of this. And then when you have kind of like high avoidance, low anxiety, then you're getting your more like um, traditional avoidant attachment. Oh, here's the thing that I'll say: they're not really low anxiety. They're actually quite anxious. But what they're most
Okay.
anxious about is they're most anxious about like, is this going to, um, is this going to, are they going to, is this person going to suffocate me? Are they going to give me enough space? And so there's that kind of retreating. Okay. Yeah.
It's almost then, and this will not be a shocker to our listeners, as in the anticipation is always the worst case scenario as you're describing that, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
No one's probably come to see you, Amy, I'm assuming, and said, I'm afraid everyone will love me and think I'm awesome. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Exactly.
We
Exactly.
don't have that in our sessions. No.
Nope.
No.
Nope. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think, the research on OCD and attachment is interesting. So there are higher levels of quote unquote insecure attachment in people with OCD relative to people without mental health concerns. What that means is insecure attachment is all the quadrants other than that secure one. So that is the avoidant, the anxious ambivalent, and the disorganized. But like that's true of all mental health concerns. That's OCD is not special in that way.
Right.
So I feel compelled to say that OCD is not this like relational death sentence or anything like that. Even though
Of
we've
course.
talked about, the specific ways that it can get in the way. Okay, doesn't mean it's 100% of people. It's just a little bit more. And there's also been some research about relationship OCD and attachment. and relationship OCD that manifests as a lot of reassurance seeking, a lot of like, are you going to leave me? That kind of thing. And a lot of like, are you the one for me? You know, is this relationship right? Tend to have a higher sort of anxious ambivalent attachment. And people who have relationship OCD, which is focused on potential flaws in their partner, like, will I ever be able to love my partner because they have that mole on their face or something like that, or because they text with the letter U instead of writing out YOU. Or,
Oh,
you know,
well, that's an instant breakup right there. Yes,
I
absolutely.
I agree, but I'm just saying, you know, for example, um, yeah, those things when it's really focused on attributes of the other, those folks tend to have more of that avoidant attachment, which makes sense. Like,
Hmm.
do I need to run away? Um, and so, knowing your attachment style, knowing where you tend to land in relationships, or where you land in a specific relationship that you want to improve, can also give you a little bit of information about, like, hey, these are the relational stories that I tend to tell myself about this particular friendship, or this particular romantic relationship. And so, and then if you add OCD on top of it, you know, again, like you said, it's sort of fuel to the fire. So I think it can be helpful if people are like, oh, okay, yeah, I tend to be a little bit more anxious, ambivalent, and reassurance seeking is one of my compulsions. I've got to be really deliberate about recognizing when I'm activated. I've got this like 1-2 punch of attachment style and OCD that's going to fuel this reassurance seeking. And I also have a worksheet in the book about kind of helping people identify and then examine their reassurance seeking. And it has a few questions for folks to ask themselves, like, you know, did I accept the answer? Did I ask more than once? Is this an actual knowable thing? That kind of thing, to help them see, hey, wait a second, is this serving to get information and strengthen attachment with my partner or friend or whomever, or is it to temporarily assuage anxiety, which is going to just like boop, come right back up?
And due to the fact that that temporary assuaging of anxiety to get there triggers that fight, flight, or freeze response, it seems to become the most important thing in the moment
Yes.
and overcomes the notion that the relationship is actually the most important thing in the moment, and doing the thing that goes against what OCD wants is the most important thing. But it feels so real.